Hey friends, my name is Joey and welcome back to my channel, Gender Not Found. Um, so I'm gonna do a Guardian Angel today and maybe trying to impress Matt a little bit later. But my goal is to record for about 3 hours. And I was gonna ask you guys, do you guys prefer like the longer uploads or more uploads like all at once? Like if I would upload like 3 or 4 hours of video at a time, regardless of, whether it's in two different uploads or not. Do you guys prefer that, or do you prefer like when I do shorter uploads over, a longer period of time, like when I do shorter uploads every single day? Like, because lately I've been doing longer uploads, but that means I'm not able to upload as often, and I might not be able to upload on Mondays, Wednesdays, and and I might not be able to record on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays because I have Carrie Ann and my support worker coming in, so it's like a lot in one day, so it's very unlikely that I'll be able to record on those days. So what do you guys think? Do you like it when I do like more in one day, or do you like it when I do like less in one day and then spread it out more? Anyway, we're just gonna jump right in, and I'm stressed and tired. So if you're wondering why I don't look or seem, as excited as with some of my other videos. I'm just stressed and tired, that's all. Anyway, let's get into this. Oh yeah, and the rats are making noise. They've been up off and on throughout the morning, so you might hear them making noise. And I got them a water bottle, which was a great investment. They were absolutely obsessed with it. And it's really nice because it helps to keep the cage clean. Because I have to change their water like several times a day when it was in a dish. Like, I had to change it like several times a day because they would get food in it and very often. And sometimes poop in it. So with this, they have they have water and they can't get anything in it because it's in a water bottle. So, anyway, sorry, but okay. Anyway, let's just hang on, hang on. I'll go on with this. Um, and I might be recording in my room later because I told you the landlord's coming in to do a thing. So, yay! But as far as I know, the landlord's not coming in tomorrow, so tomorrow I'm gonna have the whole living room to myself and I'm gonna record for like 4 or 5 hours. Um, yeah. Okay. It's let's just let's read. Hang on. Hold on a second. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I got a lot going on at the moment, so I'm just really stressed out and I'm like trying to record because it's helping me be less stressed. I got a lot going on. I got a lot going on, so alright. We are on Chapter 36, The Stages of Grief. It had been just 3 days since they decided upon signing with Apocalyptica. They had visited the large mansion multiple occasions, talking with Dessa and her husband Barty about the accident, what had happened, how it happened, when it had happened, and especially how their friend had been handling it, how they had been handling it since Mo's breakdown 10 days earlier. Mo's parents had been on their way home from a party that evening, and the other driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, causing the head-on collision. Guys, don't drive tired. It's not a good idea. His parents were severely injured. His father was his father with brain damage, and his mother who was partially crushed. 2 days later, his mom was pronounced dead, and several hours after her, on the start of day 3, his father was as well, and both were moved from life support together. The final day of the service was small and quiet, and he hadn't gone to the funeral since then. He'd moved into the stable a week later, refusing to interact with the family. Mo would leave at odd hours of the night, and after receiving notice of their death, the bank repossessed their home, giving them 72 hours to remove all property from the house. Basically, it's just been hell, Dessa said softly as her husband took her hand. We've been trying so hard to get him to connect with us, and he's just avoiding any and all human contact. It breaks my heart to see my nephew like this. It's the first stage of grief, denial and isolation, Fiona said softly. You guys seem to have reached the acceptance stage, but Mo's still denying it. Next is anger, then bargaining, followed by depression, and finally acceptance. Well, he has seemed to be easily violent lately. Perhaps he's starting to reach the anger aspect of grief, Dessa said softly as the shattering of glass met their ears. Someone's getting a drink of water. Leave me the hell alone, Gummy! Slam. They all stared at each other before Fiona stood. I think he's reached the anger aspect, she said softly as she walked towards the stairs, the boys now following behind her as she knocked on the door. Receiving no answer, she knocked again, and this time the door whipped open. What? Moko snapped before looking at the blonde apologetically. Before Fiona could answer, FP did, nudging her out of the way. You and me outside. Fight me. Let's blow off some steam. The two stared at each other for the longest time, unblinking, until finally Mo sighed. Fine. He walked past the group and Ignitus followed him out the door. Fiona looked around for a broom, but was nudged aside by Mo's Aunt Dessa as she began sweeping up the shattered remains of what appeared to be either a clear vase or a drinking glass. She couldn't tell. I'm really sorry. As his friend, you know he's usually not like this, Dessa said softly. I know, it's okay. We're here for him, and right now that's all that matters. It had taken him more than a week to get out of the anger stage and into the bargaining stage. He'd stopped breaking things, but had moved himself back out to the stables and into the loft once again, but only under the condition that he eat at least one meal with the family by request of his aunt. Today, it was Fiona, Marshall, and FP who was sporting a faded black eye from their last fight. The 3 visitors lounged on the hay bales while Mo rocked side to side on his hammock. Sometimes I wonder, he said quietly, catching their attention, if there was something I could have done to stop it. I mean, I know whatever happened would most likely happen, but I wonder if there was some chance that I could have stopped it from happening. The accident. Dude, if there was some way we could go back in time to stop it, I would do it for you in a heartbeat, man, Marshall said, watching as he continued to rock side to side on the hammock, his hands behind his head. I know nobody will ever be able to change it, but I wish they could be. Now he sighed, closing his eyes. I would give anything, just to be able to say goodbye. The bargaining stage had been surprisingly short. That was the first and last time any of them ever heard him bringing up changing in the past, but he knew his wish was foolish and would never happen. The universe never gives back what it takes away, no matter how much you want it to. The lesson in that point is acceptance of life's curveballs and challenges, no matter how difficult. Fiona wasn't the only one who'd done research into the stages of grief, and Mo was 90% sure he was in the depression stage. He didn't want to do anything. No music, no friends, no hanging out, no eating. The only thing he did was take care of the horses. Everything reminded him of his parents in some way, how his aunt would cook, watching one of the house staff putting away tools in the garage, even the way he would get angry with drivers on the road when somebody cut him off and he cussed them out. Had he had a cigarette in his mouth, he would have been a spitting image of his father just then, and realizing that he had to pull over and just rest his head on the steering wheel. For the first time in almost a month since that first breakdown, he reached over and turned on the radio to drown out the silence in the car. He hadn't wanted to be stuck in the stable anymore or be near any of them. Oddly, in his quest to be alone, he was heading to Marshall's house because he knew he could just sit there and be without being bothered. There was nothing good on the radio, and once again he just wanted silence, so he flicked it off. Now the silence was suffocating, and he wanted the music back. Annoyed with his indecisiveness, he began slowly banging his head on the steering wheel. The car honking in response to the hits. Why? Beep. The hell? Beep. Can't. Beep. I make up. Beep. My mind. Beep. Mo, are you okay? The sudden voice made him jump, and looking over, he spotted Fiona, who was carrying bags of snacks and soda on her arm standing outside the car. I'm being difficult, he said simply, hitting his head on the steering wheel again, once again making the car honk. Is there anything I can do? She said, she asked softly, putting her head between the steering wheel and his forehead. He was silent for a moment. Do you know how to drive? He asked, now looking up, a bright red spot on his forehead. Yeah, I've been learning. FP lets me drive his truck around, she said, watching as he got out of the car. You drive, he said, walking to the passenger seat and getting in, leaning the seat back. Climbing in the car, Fiona put the bag next to her, moving the seat up and adjusting the mirrors, as she vaguely wondered what the extra pedal near the brake was. Checking for any oncoming cars, Fiona put the car into drive and went down the road. As she drove faster, the car began screeching, and she yelped, slamming on the brakes. Luckily, there was no one behind them, though oddly, Moko was laughing as the car stalled. You've never you've never driven stick shift before? No. Why'd it make that noise? Did I break it? Now he just laughed harder. Nah, you didn't break it. You have to shift gears, he said, motioning to the stick near her. The pedal all the way on the left is the clutch. You have to press on that and shift gears at the same time. As a basic rule of thumb, you shift gears for every 15 miles per hour, so you go, either up or down. 1 out of 15 is first gear, and 1 to 15 is first gear, and 15 to 30 is just second. 30 to 45 is third, and so on, he said, watching as Fiona looked at the shift stick and clutch as if expecting them to bite her. Are you sure you want me to drive? Yeah, now pay attention. Press down on the clutch and put the car in neutral, he said, watching as she did as she was told. Okay, now start it. She did. Okay, now release the clutch. Fiona moved her foot back, waiting for the next of the instructions. Okay, hit the clutch and shift it from neutral to first, and slowly step on the gas to get it to about 10 miles per hour, he said, feeling the car accelerate slowly. Bring it up to around 15. Fiona did. I can feel the car shaking. I know, now press the clutch hard, shift into second, and press the gas. Fiona did as she was told, and the car jerked forward, but this time stayed running as the speed increased. I did it! There you go, he said with a grin as he leaned back, lounging in the seat. There's a stoplight. How do I slow down? It's the same aspect but backwards. Bring it up to around 15 to 20ish and press the clutch and shift into neutral. Bring it to a stop and shift to first, he said, watching as she slowly did as she was told, putting on the blinker for the upcoming turn. And I just do the same as the first time? Clutch drive, hit 15, clutch shift, and I'm good? Yup, you can feel it under your feet, the vibrating. When it does that, the gears are ready to be shifted essentially. Fiona nodded as the car began to stall. Rev the car. She did, and it roared back to life. Fiona laughed, and once the light turned green, she followed his procedure and drove, turning the corner and speeding up, shifting the car once again. This is really cool. I know. My dad taught me, he said, growing quiet. Are you okay? She watched as he let out a sigh, blowing his hair from his face. It just hurts, Fiona. I hate talking about them like they're my past. I shouldn't be having this problem for another 40 years at least, he said quietly. But just because it hurts doesn't mean I want to forget them. I mean, I'm sure it hurts more to think about how his old man died, but he still remembers him, and with a smile, too. I want to get to the point where the memory brings joy and not pain. I want to remember the little things and smile, not get upset. You'll get there, Mo. You just have to think of it like this. Well, they're not physically with you. They're not really gone either. Like they're with you spiritually, you know? Yeah. The atmosphere of the car was calm and peaceful, and eventually they turned into the neighborhood. Finally, Moko perked up. You want to do something fun for the last 2 minutes of our drive? He asked, now looking at the blonde who had stopped at a stop sign. Sure. Park the car and swap seats with me. It was a lovely day, and Marshall wanted to be outside. Too bad if he went out to bask in the sun like he'd wanted, he'd probably get too burnt again. So, he'd probably get burnt again. So instead, he lay in the shade of the garage, smothered in FPS one in SPF 100 waiting for Fiona's return. She said she said she'd be back in 20. Marshall knew the walk took 30, so he expected her back within the hour. He'd been sitting on a chair, a soda from the mini fridge in hand, when he heard the sound of squealing tires that only meant one thing. Grabbing his hoodie, he threw it on, going to the end of the driveway and watching as a familiar car screamed around the corner, speeding down past Marshall's house, leaning on the horn. Marshall knew what that meant, and quickly he got out of the way as the car hit the brakes, spinning into a perfect donut before slamming into reverse at full speed, before spinning out again, before parking only slightly angled in his driveway. Once the car was shut off, Fiona stumbled out of the passenger seat and flopped on the grass. "Oh my globland!" she screeched. Mo was laughing as he shut the car door. "Oh, geez, that was fun. The look on your face. You okay?" he asked, grabbing her bag and handing it to Marshall. "Never ever do that again. You should see me when it snows and the parking lots are empty. Spinouts and drifting like crazy's the only way to be," he said with a grin as Marshall offered the blonde his hand to pull her up. "No, no, I just need to lie here for another minute," she said, breathing slowly. "Fiona learned how to drive manual," Mo said to Marshall as he walked from into the garage, flopping down on the ground as he sat watching the two. "Mo taught you?" he asked the blonde who still lay on the grass. "Yeah, I'm still trying not to puke, Mush," the blonde said as she slowly crawled into the garage after Marshall. "So, how'd that come about?" Marshall asked, the question open for either. "Well, I was having a moment banging my head on the steering wheel, and the sound of my car's honks of pain attracted Fiona's attention. I was on my way home with snacks," she said, now turning on her back to look at Marshall. "So, how'd you do driving manual?" She thought she broke my car after the gear squealed and the car stalled. "Yeah, I did," the blonde said with a laugh. "Are we gonna do anything today? Because it's lovely out, and the beach would most definitely be pleasant. We could go just after sundown and have a fun night with a bonfire and stuff." "I'm up for that," Marshall said, looking to his friend. "Want to come?" "Sure, nighttime beach time sounds like a blast. I've never done it." Uh. "Should we see if Ash, M, and FP want to come too?" Fiona asked, watching as Marshall thought about it. "I think the two guys have to work, but I'll ask them," he said, standing and walking into the house. Fiona followed him, and Mo was bringing up the rear, and by the time they got into the living room, Marshall was on the phone with Ember. "Yeah, cool, okay. Yeah, a big one. Thanks, Em. See you in a bit," he said, hanging up. "Ember's in, and she's bringing a big cooler, too, and FP does have work." "Yeah, so does Ash. I just texted him," Mo said, holding up his phone. Hmm. Their names were Alyssa and Richard Cronin, ages 36 and 38. They were both severely injured in a car accident 3 days before he'd been admitted into the hospital. After doing some research, Hudson Aberdeen had found some information on the family of his heart donor, and the first thing that popped up was the obituary. Richard Cronin, 38, 1976 to 2013, and Alyssa Cronin, 36, 1978 to 2013. Both Richard and Alyssa were born and lived in their hometown of Woodlark throughout their lives. They met in middle school and could not be separated since. What started out as an innocent friendship blossomed into something beautiful and rare, because even with their young love, it was an undeniable fact that they were nothing less than soulmates. At 18, Richard proposed to Alyssa, and 2 years later they were married, the following year giving them their one and only child, Modestus, their son. Richard and Alyssa were doting parents and staple figures in the community. Richard running an auto mechanics shop, and Alyssa heading to local food pantries and soup kitchens. The loss of their lives had not only impacted the remaining family, but the community as well. Alyssa is survived by her older sister Dessa, and both Alyssa and Richard are survived by their son Modestus Cronin. While the funeral is open to the public, the family requests that for the final day of the open casket viewing ceremony, and the service be closed to the public, so the family can privately mourn and thank all in advance that their privacy be respected. The service will be this Sunday, the 18th, from 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m., and the burial will be at Melrose Cemetery at 11 a.m. Hudson knew that with his gain there had been a loss, but he'd never expected that the heart had come from a person so young. She'd only been 36 and had a child much like he did. The boy, from his calculations, was at least 16 and at most 17, far too young to live on his own. Now he wondered if even seeing if he could do something for the family would be appropriate. How do you explain that with his mother's death he was allowed to live? Honestly, he began seriously contemplating disregarding the whole affair, but something was compelling him to reach out to this family. Looking at the online obituary, he scanned around until he found a number for the paper itself, and before he could overthink it, he dialed the number. Woodlark Enterprise, this is Linda speaking. Hello, Linda. I have a very peculiar question. After going through your online obituaries, I found one on the Cronin family. That's right, Rich and Linda. Rich and Lissa, they were wonderful people. Indeed, they were. They helped me in a very big way several months ago, and now hearing of the family's loss, I do wish to send the remaining family something. Would you happen to have the address where something could be mailed to them? I do. Everything goes to Eliza's sister Dessa and her husband Barty, and anything that would be for Modestus would go there as well. Give me a minute and I'll pull it up for you. After waiting for several minutes, Hudson wrote down the address and after thanking the woman, hung up the phone, now wondering exactly what he would do. What could he give that boy in thanks for his life? They started driving to the beach at around 6 o'clock, so by the time they'd arrived, the sun had fully set and the streetlights on the boardwalk were on. They'd taken the band van and filled it with beach supplies. The scent was still warm as they walked down to the beach. Moko bringing a box of wood, Marshall carrying the heavy cooler, Fiona with all the towels and blankets and a shovel, and Ember with bags of lighter fluid and newspapers, and another bag with cups and plates. They'd found a place near some flat rocks, and after dumping their belongings, the boys pulled off their shirts and ran towards the ocean, leaving the girls behind. As they sighed, Ember began organizing things into neat sections while Fiona began working on the bonfire pit. The blonde dug a wide, semi-shallow hole and pulled over some rocks to surround it and fill it in, the redhead helping as soon as she was finished. Fiona looked over her shoulder, watching as Marshall lifted the younger teen, literally tossing him into the ocean. She smiled and began setting up the logs while Ember crushed up sheets of paper and tucked them between the lumber before soaking the pile in lighter fluid. Standing, LeBlanc checked out their little spot. Em had done amazingly setting up the blanket and pinning the corners with rocks. Each towel was rolled up and resting near the edges, and their pit was perfect. Filling a bucket full of sand, Fiona put it near the fire pit just in case they needed it. Want to go swimming? I'm covered in sand in places I'd rather not admit, so yeah, the redhead said with a laugh as she took off her shorts. Her bathing suit was a two-piece black and red plaid, and actually matched her hair and color, which made Fiona laugh. Hers was a green one-piece with blue polka dots. Kicking off her own shorts, Fiona hurried after Ember, and the first thing the blonde did was, when she was knee-deep in water, was grab a wet chunk of seaweed and fling it at Marshall, who was trying once again to toss Mo into the water. It smacked him upside the head, and Fiona cheered in victory. Score! She shouted, laughing hard. Quickly turning, Marshall turned to face the blonde, and immediately Fiona turned around, running towards the shore. She'd made one step on dry land when Marshall grabbed her and hauled her over his shoulder, making her scream. She knew he was going to toss her in the water. Marsh, you know I love you, she said, holding tightly to his arm and neck. Of course I know that. You're still going to get wet for that, though, he said, getting ready to toss the blonde as she continued to cling to him. Marsh, ready? 1, 2, no, 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 no. Though on 3, much to her surprise, instead of tossing her like she'd expected, Marshall dunked them both under water, knowing Fiona wouldn't let go of him. The moment she was under the water, Fiona released him, scrambling to get above the water, and watching as he surfaced with a laugh. That's so what you get, he said, unable to control his laughter. Angrily, Fiona splashed him, and quickly he splashed her back, until it became a war between them. Maybe this would be a little less awkward if we were here with significant others, too, Ember said, watching as Moko nodded in agreement. Want to go start the fire? He suggested, watching as Fiona and Marshall continued their water battle. Sure, I brought stuff to cook and everything to make s'mores. Sweet. By the time they noticed that they were the only two people in the water, the bonfire was roaring, and Moko was on his fifth s'more and Ember on her second. They'd already roasted hot dogs for themselves. So, what is there to do at a bonfire, and what can we do at the beach at night? Ember asked through the marshmallow graham cracker and chocolate. Enjoy it. I mean, look at the stars. There's barely any light and it's still warm enough to go swimming. The moon's bright enough that we can see and go walking and stuff too. Heck, I even brought stuff to make sandcastles, Fiona said, turning her hot dog as it roasted over the flames. Yeah, and I have an old radio in the van too, so we can listen to some music if we wanted to. Marshall said, grabbing a bun for his hot dog and handing the bag to Fiona. I'll go get it, Ember said as she hurried off towards the van. She'd been gone for only a few minutes when the Silver Streak team spoke up. I think I'm going to take a walk, Mo said after a minute as he stood up dusting the sand off his pants before heading along the shoreline, leaving the group behind, though he'd only made it 30 feet or so before he was stopped. Oh no, you don't. You keep secluding yourself, and you're not doing that today. Not while I'm around, Ember said, dragging him back by his hand. Ember said, dragging him back by his hand, the radio tucked under her other arm. That's the point, Ember. I want to be alone, Mo said, resting slightly, but the redhead turned and stared at him. Do you really? She asked, now letting go of his hand. Because here you're surrounded by people who love you and worry about you and care about you. Don't be afraid to be happy, because I've seen it a few times now. That guilty look you get for having fun. Your parents would want you to be happy, Mo. They'd never be upset because you're happy while they're not here. Don't seclude yourself and force everyone away because you're feeling guilty for smiling or laughing or finding a reason to be happy. If you truly want to go, I won't stop you. But forcing yourself into exile won't make you happy. It'll just make you feel more alone. Hearing this, he just stared, blinking at the redhead, before walking back over and leaning against one of the larger rocks near the fire. Smiling, Ember set the radio on a rock, turning it on, and somehow finding an upbeat instrumental session. See, back in Scotland, we would go dancing to music much better than this, Ember said, bouncing to the beat. There were more violins, bagpipes, and guitars, though. Now she bounced her way over to Moko, grabbing his arm, and easily pulled him over as she forced him to dance around the fire with her. In the process, she grabbed Marshall, who'd finished his s'more, pulling him along as well and motioning to Fiona, who was pulled up by her boyfriend. Moko moved awkwardly as Ember grabbed his hands and began skipping around with him, though she began shaking his arms playfully. Come on, loosen up, she said with a smile. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, ducking under her arm as Ember spun him. Neither do I, and neither do they. That's what makes it fun, isn't it? She asked as he reciprocated, spinning her as she did him and making the redhead grin. There we go! They had danced and played and cooked food all through the evening until the fire had become ash, and the stars were starting to fade from the night sky. They all watched as he slowly smiled. It was small at first, but eventually Moko couldn't hold it back, and it seemed that Ember's words had gotten through to him. It had taken him 4 months and 2 weeks before he allowed himself to smile, without feeling guilt for it. She was right. They were all right. It was okay for him to have happiness. His parents would have wanted him to be happy, and it was on the drive back that he truly realized it. They truly realized that. They were on their way back, and this time Marshall was driving, not feeling the least bit tired. Fiona and Ember were knocked out in the back seat, and Mo sat up front. It's okay for me to be happy, isn't it? He asked softly as he gazed at the moving scenery through the passenger's window. Yeah, at first you feel like crap being happy after they're gone, but it gets to the point where you realize that even if you're miserable, they wouldn't want to see you like that, because looking down on us and seeing us sad would only make them upset, Marshall said quietly. They lived for us and raised us and wanted only our happiness and love in exchange for all that they did for us. The least we can do is be genuinely happy when they decide to look down on us. A simple yes would have been fine, Moko said with a grin as he continued to look out the window at the brightening sky above him. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually happy, without faking it or forcing it to happen or feeling guilty about it. I never thought I'd be happy again. I still miss you. I'll always miss you, and it still hurts. I don't think that hurt will ever go away, though. There will always be that hole in my heart from losing you both so soon. And I think maybe it's time. Marshall? Yeah? Can we make a stop before we go back to your place? Where to? Marshall had been sitting there for almost 20 minutes, simply watching his friends simply kneeling on the grass. They had gotten flowers and a pack of cigarettes. It was easy to find, as he had expected they were near his grandparents, only several plots away. The headstone was a large granite slab, and their names were engraved on it, each with their own epitaph. For his mother it read, Alyssa Cronin, sister, wife, friend, and most of all, beloved mother. His father's was very similar. His read Richard Cronin, husband, friend, and a cherished father. Moko placed the flowers in front of the headstone, and opening the cigarettes, he crumpled the plastic and stuffed it into his pocket, pulling out the lighter he'd brought as well. Placing the filter end in his mouth, the teen lit the cigarette, taking a puff before he began coughing, his eyes watering. Poking a small hole in the ground, he placed the cigarette in, standing it upright and watching as slowly but surely it turned into a small, slim tower of ash. Standing and pocketing the pack of cigarettes, he rested his hand on top of the granite slab. You don't have to worry about me anymore, he said softly. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner, but I think you know why. Better late than never, right? We will see each other again. But not yet. Not yet. With that, he walked back to the van, feeling better than he had in a while. Moko never thought it would be happening, but he was healing. Slowly but surely, he was healing. Oh my gosh. Wow. Alright, that was intense, but I'm glad that he's through that. I'm really glad that he's through that. So it seems that he's like gotten past it. I mean, he's always gonna miss his parents, of course. Like you always miss the people you loved and lost. Like it doesn't just go away. And I've lost a few people in my life, so I know that feeling. I get that feeling. It's a really shitty feeling. But yeah, it's really upsetting at first and it sucks and then you find a way to be happy again and you're always gonna miss them. You never stop missing them. Like I miss everyone I've lost. I miss my nanny. I miss my Aunt Sandy. I miss my cousin Vi. I miss my dog. Stuff like that. Like, I miss everyone that I've loved and lost in my life. But you know what they say? It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Um, anyway, so, that was chapter one, and I want to record a few more chapters. My hope is to go to 12:30, and then I have a thing with Carrie Ann from 1 to 2. And then, depending on whether or not the landlord is still here, I will be recording either in my bedroom or in the living room. So, and then I'm gonna try and record for longer tomorrow as well, because I don't have anything going on tomorrow as far as I know. So, I want to read a few more chapters of this, and then maybe later in the afternoon. And later in the afternoon, I'm planning to record a little more, and I want to try and record maybe some of a guardian angel, maybe trying to impress Matt. I'm gonna see how intense this book gets because this book can get really intense and sometimes and like I like to take breaks in between chapters, like in between like if I read a few chapters and I find it getting too intense, then I'll just take a break from it and I'll like read something else or, I just won't read for a while. Like I'll just stop recording or I'll read something else. Usually if I want to go back to recording, I prefer to read something else. Like you guys know I've been reading Trying to Impress Matt, which is that really cute, just fluffy romance book, which isn't intense. It's just really cute and sweet, and like it's not super intense. Like you don't have people dying or getting cancer or whatever. Like it's a really nice break from this really intense book, and there's 134 chapters right now, so we're about 30, 60, 90, 30, 60, 90, 120. So we're about wait, 30, 60, 90, 120. Yeah, we're about maybe a quarter of the way through-ish. Anyway, hang on. You know what? I'm gonna do the math on my calculator. Because I'm kind of curious how far along we actually are. So, 134 divided by 36. Yeah, okay, we're about a third. We're about a third of the way through. Or maybe like a quarter of the way through. Between a third and a quarter of the way through. I got like 3.77222 or something when I did the math on my calculator. I just did 134 divided by 36 and it came up as like 3.7772222. So, yeah, so we're about between a third and a quarter of the way through. I'd say like maybe 3.5% of the way through. Or not 3.5%. 30.5%. I don't know. Okay, I don't know math, but whatever. I need to take a break. Actually, I'm not feeling good, so I should probably go to the bathroom and resolve that. I'll be back in a bit. So I might only be recording for another hour, depending on how long I'm in the bathroom. And hopefully I'll record for another hour a little later because my thing with Carrie Ann is only going to take an hour, so I'm going to have time to record between like 2 o'clock and I don't know, 4 o'clock or something. And maybe I'll stay in my room and record for a little longer, like after my mom gets home if I want to keep doing that. Anyway, I'll be back.